Hello everyone. So today I want to show you how Flowcore utilizes MCP connectors so that you can more easily query and analyze your data, as well as even automate some tasks. Now, if you don't know what an MCP connector is, it is basically a way for AI to be able to tap into external devices in a more uniform way. So say an API or a database or an app, whatever it is, right? So it's similar to how you would see a USB-C port on your computer, which connects to various peripherals like webcams, keyboards, mice, what have you. I'll be sure to drop some links in the description so that if you're curious, you can read up on what MCP is or watch some videos and so on. All right. Anyway, let's just hop right in. And just to set the scene first before we start, I will head on over to my tenant on Flowcore just to show you what kind of data it is we'll be analyzing and querying. So I just went into my tenant and I have this test data core right here called gaming tournaments. And if we look inside here, I do have some example data, so some demo data that we can play with. And think of this test data or test data set as basically like Rocket League, right? Where you have cars that play football. And as you can see, you have the match results here, which essentially just contain the match duration, who won, what the scores were, and then player performance is more related to how many goals they got and how many wins and losses and goals conceded and how long the average match is for each individual player. All right, so now with that out of the way, let's start just looking at how you can use MCP with Flowcore. So let's just hop on over to the Flowcore documentation just to get situated and set up. So if you hop on over to docs.flowcore.io, we'll press getting started. And then we scroll down to what's called Flowcore MCP server. Now, before we start, I do need to preface this that you do need to have Node.js installed on your machine, and you do need to have the Flowcore CLI installed, as well as some tools that, like for example, Cursor or Claude, if you want to follow along quite strictly. And if you don't know how to install Flowcore, the Flowcore CLI, then it's right above the Flowcore MCP server right here, where you can just press install and then just follow this tutorial and just step through it. And then once you're done, you'll be set up and good to go. So let's get started. I'll hop into introduction here, and as you can see, we do support Cursor, or we have documentation, for Cursor and Claude. We'll be adding more as things come out and as this evolves, but for now, we have the Cursor configuration and the Claude desktop configuration. What we'll be using is the Cursor configuration, which is an IDE that's has a very AI integrated feel to it. So here we are. Basically, we'll just be going through this entire documentation right here, this page, and then we'll start playing with some queries. So to start with, you can see that you can grab this JSON object right here. This is what we'll need inside Cursor. However, I will be grabbing the one a bit further down, which enables me to also push data into Flowcore. So not just fetching data, querying it, and analyzing it, but also actually being able to store information in Flowcore. Now, the reason I'm using this one, I will get to at the end of the video because I don't want to spoil it just yet. So I'll be grabbing this one. But if you just want to query some information, you can just use the one above at the top. All right, so let's hop on over to Cursor. And here we go to Cursor settings, scroll down or pick the MCP tab, add new global MCP server, and then we just paste this information in. Now, as you can probably see right now, we do need some credentials because this specific structure requires us to come with a username and a personal access token. So how do we create those? Well, open your terminal of choice. For me, it's Warp. And then just to figure out who the username is, we can go to Flowcore, who am I? Here we go. And the one we're using is this one called Flowcore YouTube. So we'll plop this in here. And now we need a personal access token. So how do we get that? Well, we go back to the terminal, write Flowcore auth new pat MCP demo. You can call it whatever you want. This is just what I'll be calling it. And there we go. So we grab this little pat token right here. And remember to save it somewhere, because as it says right here, it will be gone. So for this demo, I don't really care. But again, if it's something you'll be using frequently, then you probably want to save it somewhere. And finally, for my case, I also need an API key. So the API key is what you use to authenticate that you are allowed to send data into your specific tenant. So we'll say Flowcore auth new key. We'll call it just MCP demo. And it needs to be attached to the Flowcore YouTube tenant so that I am able to send data into that specific tenant. So just let that run. Here we go. And it's the exact same thing with the API key. You need to store it somewhere safely. But in this case, this is just a simple demo, so we don't really care. Here we go. And that should be it. We should be all set. So if we go back to Cursor settings, you can see, here it is. And it has a little green dot right there, which indicates that it works. All right, so why don't we just give it a try? Let's just try out this MCP connection by saying, what tenants do I have access to in Flowcore? And there we go. As you can see just now, I just wanted to point this out, that he will ask you every time you run an MCP command, which can be quite annoying. He will ask you to confirm the action, which can be very tedious. So we'll touch on that right after this. But as you can see, he actually fetched all three of my tenants. So if we can just verify this by going into Flowcore, scroll to the top, and there you go. See? It's the exact same one. So he's already connected and ready to go. Now about this constant confirmation, let's just fix that right now by going to Features, scroll down to what's called Enable Auto Run Mode. Now, as you can see, he will be warning you that essentially you put him in YOLO mode, meaning that he can do whatever he wants. So this obviously can be very dangerous, but we do have a little workaround for that. So right here, you can give him a prompt, so what he has to consider before every action. And we so kindly wrote a simple one just right here for you so that you can just ask him to do things without worrying about him breaking a bunch of stuff. So we'll just grab this one. It's under tip right underneath, like at the very beginning of the documentation. Plop it in there. And there we go. Now, if you are welcome to just read through what this does. But essentially, what you need to know about this one is that we tries or wants to delete something on your behalf, he will always have to ask you first before he's allowed to do it. This is just like a small fail-safe so he doesn't just completely mess everything up in case you gave him some vague instructions. But that's about it. All right then. So I've added some pre-scripted queries right here. That's just so that we can move along a bit faster than usual, so I don't have to type everything out, so that you get to the point a bit faster. So here I want to ask him, sorry, that was the wrong one. It was this one. So here I basically want to say, hey, can you check my data core gaming tournaments to determine who is our most successful player in the spring championship? So we'll just try and run this. And notice how I was very vague in what I asked for. I just asked him, can you figure out who is our most successful player in the spring championship in this data core? Meaning if we just look at the data core itself, there's nothing really in here like on the flow types or the event types that specifically indicate what a spring championship is. So really just notice what he has to do. First, he has to grab the data core, which, granted, we did tell him what data core to look in, but then he has to grab all the flow types, and then he has to grab all the event types, and then go through each individual event type to figure out, okay, what data is it that's related to something called Spring Championship? And after, as you can see right here, he did successfully get the events, and he did produce a bunch of information showing win-loss records of the specific player called Rocketmaster99. Now, just take a second to realize what this means. You can now very easily get a quick overview of what your data core contains without having to do a manual lookups and fetching the information, storing it somewhere, and then look in the database or wherever it is, right? You can just immediately just ask him now, and he will try to figure out what it is you want. But let's take it one step further. Let's ask him a more general question. So, okay, interesting. Could you compare the playing styles of Rocketmaster99 and Aerial King? And there we go. So now, if we just scroll up a bit here and look at what he did, he essentially now went through the data again, but only, as you can see, let's just look, hang on, let's see, right here, right? He had to figure out himself where the relevant information was to produce something that made sense, like related to my query, right? So he by himself figured out, oh, I need to go into player performance to see the goals scored and losses and wins, so that he can give me a better like final outcome. And to top it off, he also has the full capability of comparing event types, because he could fetch both parts and then just start comparing it to get like a full picture of what it is that he wants to know, right? Now, I really wanted to showcase this because the implications are huge. It basically means that you can just imagine if you had a lot of data that you don't really know what is or how it relates. Basically, you have a giant blob of information that you would like to clean up, figure out, and relate to one another so you can make proper queries and connect systems or whatever it is, right? Basically, what you're able to do here is just feed the information into Flowcore. So put in a bunch of data cores or in a data core flow. It doesn't really matter. You just pour it in. And then you can start asking this AI to make sense of all your data. Ask him to figure out what relates to what are the IDs, and can you split the ID in two and figure out what relates in what capacity, and anything really. Essentially what this implies is that you don't really need fancy data pipelines or data lakes to clean up your information before it gets processed and sent into a database, where a data scientist would have to spend weeks or months combing through the data structures to figure out what relates to what. Now you're quite literally able to just dump the information in and then ask an AI to figure out exactly how everything relates. Now, obviously, he's not going to be right every single time, and he might be hallucinating a little bit, but just this is like an amazing starting point, and it's only getting better. And again, I'm not saying that data engineers and data scientists are just completely obsolete, but it's more the fact that they can use these tools as well as just regular people who just want to understand their information or their data. But the data scientists are now actually able to have an AI process the information and like help him understand what it is, meaning that he suddenly has so much more free time to focus on other things rather than just sitting down and cleaning up information. But all right, let's try one more fun little thing, which is, I'll just grab this little note right here, where we will ask him, generate a tournament performance report showing each player's win rate and goal differences. Now look what he does. Notice how he actually generates a markdown in basically constructing a report. And again, because of these MCP connectors, you don't really, you can just bring in a different one as well. Say a Microsoft Word MCP connector, suddenly allowing you to fetch data from Flowcore, generate a report, save it to a Word document, and then send it off to, for example, a shareholder or someone who's interested in this information or who needs it. So you can very quickly just start collecting data so you can make invaluable decisions rather than having someone else come in and then let them work on this information for a couple of weeks or a couple of days, and then you finally have something to work with, right? And have this dependency on other people. And just for the heck of it, let's do one more. Let's ask him to generate a report using HTML and chart.js. Let's just see what he produces. And there we go. He actually generated an HTML web page. So let's just, we'll grab that one. And we will have a look at it. And there you go. He actually produced a detailed web page with a bunch of charts that could basically write up his report, but in a more visual manner. And again, this was just asking him to produce some HTML with some chart.js integrations. So again, you could quite easily incorporate this into other MCP connectors. So when a Power BI one comes out, you could have him read the information from Flowcore, do the analysis, generate the report, and then generate a Power BI file. And then you have it ready and you can send it off as it is, and you're good to go. You don't need an excessive, massive data pipeline just to get a grasp of what it is you're working with and what state your company's in. And this was just a fun little demo of just some example data, right? You could, if you had some actual business value information that you could run your AI on, then clearly this will be way more valuable to you. And I really just wanted to showcase how easily you can start producing this kind of content and get an amazing insight in your company's data. So before we end, I do want to just do a little demo, because you know how this data in this sample data right here, right, in the gaming tournaments. Now, how we produce this demo data for this specific YouTube video was actually just with the Cursor agent. So just to demonstrate right here, I'll just grab the prompt that we sent him right here, paste it in. Right, you could read it. You can, if you want to read it, you can pause it. I'll just scroll slowly down so you can read through it. But essentially what we did was that we asked him, can you produce a fun example within Flowcore so that we can start making fun, interesting queries and just demonstrate how the MCP works and how powerful it is? And he quite literally, without my help whatsoever, decided, all right, you clearly want to show off a gaming tournament about Rocket League. And I was happy. So yeah. And this was why I needed to be able to have the API key so that I was able to send this test information into Flowcore. Now we can try running it again and see what he does. Because what he will do is he will create a data core, create the necessary flow types and event types, and then also populate it with demo information. So let's just try and run it. And there we go. Let's have a look at what he did. So first, he figured out what tenant to use, and he just used the original one, because he's using the username to figure out which one to use, but otherwise he would have to specify it. And he decided he's going to create a data core, and wait, let's just check out what is it exactly he wants to make. A coffee shop operations. All right. So he created the data core, and we can even open it up to see exactly what he does. And he created this data core called coffee shop operations. Then he created a flow type for orders, and one flow type for customer feedback, followed by an event type that was about order completed and customer rating. All right, that's cool. And then my absolute favorite part is that now he realized, okay, the event types and everything's ready. Now we do need some test data, so there's actually something to query, right? And as you can see right here, he decided, all right, we're going to start shoving this information in called location ID, order ID, items, what they wanted, a cappuccino, what size, a croissant. Obviously, you need to have that. And he did it for the customer feedback, and he kept adding it to the various event types. So let's just have a look. If we go back to Flowcore, go back to your tenant, scroll down, and yeah, right there it is. That's the data core, coffee shop operations. And as you can see, these are the event types. We open them up, and then here it is. Someone gave this place a 3 out of 5. That's rough. Tea was a bit cold, so I mean that's fair enough. And this one had an amazing cheesecake. And then if we go to order completed, again, he generates an example of what they ordered: chocolate chip cookies, an espresso. And this was without any of my input, other than, can you make an interesting data core so that I have something for this YouTube video? So I have something interesting to query, and so that I am able to match or correlate various event types, right? So he kind of just went on his own and made a really cool little demo, almost cooler than the one that he made before, but oh well. So yeah, that was basically how you use MCP with the Flowcore connectors, use MCP with Flowcore. And again, I can't emphasize enough how this is just the beginning, because we really just wanted to get involved as soon as we saw the MCP when it was announced and everyone started using it. We really wanted to get on that as well. We're already working on making it even better, so I can't stress enough how much I recommend you start playing with it now, because it is only going to get better. We're already working on running local read models so that you can fetch even more information to store locally on your machine and make even better queries, which would reduce the fetch time and significantly reduce the hallucinations that he might end up doing. And you will use a lot less tokens. Additionally, we're talking about bringing this into the Flowcore platform itself so that you can start making queries without having to use, for example, Cursor or Claude. So again, I cannot stress enough how much I recommend you start just using this tool immediately, because it's a complete game changer for us internally as well, because we can just start working 10 times faster with customers figuring out exactly what kind of what the data is that they asked us to analyze or figure out and connect and stuff like that. So this was our demo, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you really try it out. I'll be sure to drop some links in the description on how to do these various steps that I showcased here, as well as where you can find us. I do recommend that you join our Discord or our socials so that you can keep up with new updates, as well as ask us any questions, give us feedback. This is the beginning of the MCP connector, and we'll be doing way more with this. So by all means, join our Discord and start spamming us with questions, feedback, bug reports, whatever it is, right? So thank you, and see you next time.